What's going on, everyone? My name is Mark and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'll be making not just any Pokeball, but rather my rendition of Pikachu's Pokeball from the first episode of Pokemon Indigo League, which would be the first episode of Pokemon to ever air. Now, this is a prop that is not talked about very often, so I don't expect there to be a lot of traction with this video. However, this is something that I've always wanted to have, so I figured when would there be a better time than while Pokemon Legends Arceus is trending given its January 28th of 2022 release. Also, while we're on the topic of Pokemon Legends Arceus, let me know in the comment section below if you would like to see me make the Pokeball from that game. I'll make a video on it, and I'll put that video out as soon as humanly possible. Now, shifting focus back onto the present topic of interest, I would like to say that any resources that were used in this video are listed in the description below, as I believe that it all starts with material selection if you want to try to replicate what I've made. I understand that for some, this video may only serve its purpose strictly as a form of entertainment, but for the demographic of viewers that want to use this video as a tutorial, I want to arm you with all of the same exact resources that I used to get this job done. So guys, get out there, go make some kick props, and then show it off to your friends, family, or fellow cosplayers. Right off the bat, the first thing I'm going to mention is that this was not included in the STL, meaning that the electronics cavity was an afterthought. In fact, the entire idea of making this Pokeball light up was an afterthought. Essentially what had happened is, since I had not run my filament through the filament sensor on my 3D printer, the print job did not automatically stop at 3/4 of the way when it ran out of filament. As all this is the classic scenario of life handing you lemons, I decided to take the opportunity to make some lemonade, and boy, it's sweet. The method by which I decided to illuminate this Pokeball is with a material that is called Electroluminescent wiring, also referred to as EL wire. The process for getting the EL wire control box to fit into the Pokeball was actually quite simple, as all I had to do was isolate the control box and then solder an alternate battery pack onto the positive and negative leads of that control box. The only thing here that I don't think I have footage on is adding an additional connector to this circuit so I could illuminate two different types of electroluminescent wiring. During the process of getting the electronics controller to fit into the cavity of this Pokeball, one of the questions that came up was whether or not I should line the electronics cavity with a non-conductive material. Personally, I still don't think that this is something that's detrimental. However, the reason for doing this anyway was only in the interest of protecting the circuit board for the controller. In this clip, the controller for the EL wire is covered under a layer of Flex Seal tape. Flex Seal tape is made of rubber. One thing that does not eat through rubber easily is the alkaline that's contained within household AA batteries. And as we all know, household batteries are known to leak from time to time, making Flex Seal tape a justifiably logical choice. The next step that I took in this process was cover the electronics cavity. While keeping in mind that the batteries on this device will eventually need to be changed, I made sure that this cover for the electronics cavity was removable with easy access. To accomplish this, I went with two mounting screws that are 12 millimeters in length. I started by drilling two pilot holes with a 3 30-seconds drill bit, followed by a 15/64 drill bit. Now, while we wait for my on-screen self to finish up with this task, I'd like to first thank anybody who's still following along with this video. If you'd like to see more content, also hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you're notified when I put out another video. If you have destructive or constructive criticism, or if you have an idea for a video that you would like to see me make, which I can do research on and make happen for you in a future video, please utilize the comments section below and let me know, as I do enjoy engaging in conversation with my viewers. Now, to switch focus back to the instructional portion of this video, to recap, I had just used a 3 30-seconds drill bit to drill pilot holes for my mounting screws, and then I switched over to a 15/64 drill bit. With that increase in size of drill bits, I only drilled deep enough to allow the heads of the mounting screws to fit flush with the exterior surface of the ball. Then I followed up by test fitting these mounting screws and ensuring that they fit as originally intended. They ended up fitting well, so it was time to go ahead and move on to the next step. The second half of the ball is in a fixed position, meaning that it will never come off, so I went with Loctite super glue with gel control. As far as adhesive strength goes, the next step up would be 5-minute epoxy, which would give you better results, but this is going to be a display item, so 5-minute epoxy wasn't really necessary in this case. Also, as shown in the footage, by no means of the word was I in any way modest with the amount of glue that I used to adhere these pieces together. Now that's not to say that I didn't try to be at first, but that was a lot of space to cover with an adhesive, and by the end of it, I ended up using almost the entire bottle of glue. Now Loctite is only like $4 a bottle, so the price factor is not the reason why I wanted to be modest. The reason why I wanted to use this sparingly is because it's something that I use quite a bit of. So much in fact that I usually buy at around 7 to 8 bottles at a time. So by using that resource sparingly, I was just prolonging the inevitability of me having to go out in public and buy more superglue, given my introverted nature. And here we come upon the next step in this process. Installing the button for this Pokeball's activator, or might I say, extending the button for this Pokeball's activator. Essentially all I did here was 3D print a basic cylindrical shape, and I glued that on top of the button that's on the control box. Then on top of the extension that I created, I went ahead and glued the Pokeball's activator button on top of that. Or for lack of better terms, we can call that a button cover. Now to some, my methods may seem a little barbaric and slightly less technologically inclined, as I have displayed multiple times in this video by physically modifying these models rather than altering the 3D files within something like Fusion 360. However, that is software that I have not learned to use yet. So to add the lightning bolt insignia onto the top half of this Pokeball, I took a Pokemon trading card game energy card, and I turned it into a stencil, and then I taped it into place where I wanted the insignia to be. And when I was happy with the placement of the stencil, I went ahead and grabbed a Sharpie and filled in the stencil. I would like to mention real quick that this is not the same insignia that is shown in the first episode of Pokemon. This is the energy card version of that insignia. Hence why at the beginning of the video, I referred to this as my rendition of Pikachu's Pokeball. The reason for this is that I find the lightning bolt from the energy card to just be simply more attractive. Earlier, one thing that I mentioned was that my methods can sometimes be slightly barbaric. This is what I meant. What I'm doing in this clip is heating up an X-Acto knife with a butane torch, and I'm physically cutting out the insignia. This is not exactly the most fun task. The reason for that lies within the properties of heat transfer. As I continue to heat up this X-Acto knife's blade, heat is moving from a hot to a cold surface, meaning that the handle is slowly getting hotter. I know that it doesn't exactly show it in the footage, but I did take breaks in between to allow the X-Acto knife to cool down. Moving on, the first thing I'm going to ask is, what kind of lightning bolt insignia would this be if it did not light up? To accomplish this, all I really had to simply do was add an additional connector into the circuit so I could not only illuminate the top half of the ball, but also the electroluminescent wiring that will later wrap around the circumference of the ball. Out of this entire process, I do have to say that this is probably my favorite portion of making this video, because I get to go back and watch this start coming to life. Look at that. The only thing I wish was that I had gotten slightly different color of electroluminescent wiring, because that is more of a green tint, and the lightning bolt symbol should be yellow. Now I know that you can only see this briefly, but if you go back and pause the video, you'll notice that I used more Flex Seal on the interior side of the top half of the ball. The reason for that is the next step, which is pretty messy. A question came up while I was making this, and that was, how could I fill in the remaining void that was created by making this lightning bolt shaped cavity? The answer to that lies within something that I've used in previous videos, which is amazing clear cast casting resin. Now allow me to mention that that really does give you an amazing clear cast. By the time it cures, you hardly have any air bubbles, and it looks fucking amazing. Moving on. To get the tinting that I wanted, I used a fluorescent yellow resin dye that's also produced by Alumilite. Once that resin cured, I finally moved on to the monotonous yet rewarding task of sanding, and I started with 80 grit sandpaper to try and get rid of as many layer lines as possible and also sand down the resin, as I did overfill the lightning bolt shaped cavity. I think sanding with 80 grit in this process is probably the most difficult, and the reason why is because it takes a lot of elbow grease to be able to sand through PLA plastic. Once I was happy with the first round of sanding, I went ahead and applied the first primer coat. For this, I'm using a 2-in-1 Sandable filler primer. By using a filler primer, what I'm trying to accomplish is filling in any remaining layer lines, and then I'll go back over it with an even more fine grade of sandpaper, and then repeat the process until I am completely happy with the end result. So to follow up, I ended up using a 320 grit sandpaper. With this grade of sandpaper, I'm not having to apply as much pressure to the surface of the Pokeball as I did with the 80 grit sandpaper that I used previously. In order to get rid of all of the imperfections, you may have to repeat this process at 320 grit a couple of times. So basically just spray and sand and spray and sand and spray and sand until you're happy with the end result. With this grade of sandpaper, you should be able to get out all minor and major imperfections in this model. In my case, my second primer coat was my final primer coat. Also, as a side note, you'll notice that throughout the video I've been working on a stand to put the Pokeball on. I didn't provide any footage on working on that, so for that, I do apologize, but to make up for it, I have provided a link to where you can find the STL for that Pokeball stand. The final grade of sandpaper that I used for this project was 600 grit sandpaper, and I am barely putting any pressure on the surface of this ball. I'm basically just allowing the paper to skate across the surface of the model. Now using 600 grit sandpaper is going to accomplish one thing. Because it is so fine, when I'm done sanding it, you'll notice that there's actually a sheen coming off of the finish of the primer coat. Then I followed up by spraying with a white semi-gloss finish spray paint. Now for spraying the bottom half of the ball, using white was an obvious choice. But for the top half of the ball, using white actually assists in accomplishing something else as well. The next product that I'm using, which is something that I have absolutely fallen in love with if you're trying to accomplish mimicking a casted metal appearance. I am referring to none other than graphite powder. Application of this product is quite simple. Just take a cotton ball and rub it onto the surface of whatever it is that you're wanting to look like it's made of metal. If it weren't for the EL wire on this project, this would actually be my favorite step. And the reason for that is the same as the former. It's one of those significant steps in the process of production where you realize that this prop is in fact coming to life. This next product is one that I have used in other videos, but in the shade of purple, Dupli-Color Metal Cast. It's a translucent red spray paint that's primarily marketed as a high-temp engine enamel. So normally, this is intended to be sprayed on casted metal parts primarily in the automotive trade. But the feature that I like about that spray paint is that it is reflective of whatever surface it's sprayed on. Another thing that I didn't provide footage on, and again I do apologize, is that I sprayed both the top and bottom halves of the ball with high gloss clear enamel. So if anybody was wondering why the ball all of a sudden has a much glossier appearance, that is why. And here we find ourselves in the final stage of this project. Like I said earlier, I was going to use not only one, but two different colors of electroluminescent wiring on this Pokeball. The process for applying this electroluminescent wiring is actually quite simple, as all I'm doing is using the same Loctite superglue with gel control as I've used in every video to date, including this one. And there we have it, everyone. That is my process for making Pikachu's Pokeball from the first episode of Indigo League. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. And only if you truly enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, and then hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when I produce and publish new content. I hope to see everybody here next time, and as always, thank you for watching.